Hello wisdom seekers, we are back here with our next episode. In this episode we will talk about the major part of the building construction, which is casting the roof slab. Generally, the thickness of the slab depends upon the total area of the building, and the steel details depend upon the dimensions of the room over which the slab comes. Here we are not going to talk about skyscrapers. Let's assume a single storied house. Here you can have a roof slab of thickness 4 or 4.5 inches and nominal standard kind of steel can be used. But if you are going for a G+1 or a G+2 type, then you can have a slab of thickness 5 or 5.5 inches. Generally, the walls in the first floor and the floors above should come exactly over the walls in the ground floor in a simple construction. But if you give a 6 inches thick wall, you can have the partition walls anywhere you want in the first floor and the floors above. Thus you can change the dimensions of the room in the consecutive floors. Here the steel details are accurately designed and selected. There are two types of slab depending upon the length and the breadth dimensions. If the length by breadth ratio is greater than or equal to 2, then it is called a one-way slab. Here the main steel or the thicker rod comes in the direction of the shorter span and is cranked at the ends. The length of the crank can be 1/3 to be on a much safer side, and you can also use 1/4 or 1/5 of the span. But if the length by breadth ratio is less than 2, then it is called a two-way slab. Here the main steel comes in both the directions and is cranked at the ends in both the directions. Here also the thickness of the rods and the spacing are accurately designed, selected and fixed. Generally, the rods at the end of the slab are extended sufficiently so that it is properly connected to the boundary beam column structure. This is technically known as development length. Thus the entire structure with all the extra bars, bends, lapping, cranking, etc. acts as a single unit. Next is cover blocks. These are cement blocks which are used to ensure that there is sufficient gap between the reinforcement and the bottom surface of the concrete, which is visible from outside. Otherwise, steel will be visible at some places through which moisture enters, which leads to the formation of rust, which spreads internally, and some parts of the concrete will fall down in the due course of time, which is called spalling of concrete, which we have discussed in our earlier videos also. Now, before pouring of concrete, one must ensure that all the electrical conduits are laid down. While fixing the shuttering, one must take care that the surface is level and there are no gaps in between to avoid the leakage of concrete. The props used to support the shuttering should have a spacing preferably 1.5 feet or 2 feet to the maximum, but never more than 2 feet, because there are chances that the shuttering may cave in while the concrete is poured, unable to bear the weight of the concrete. Another thing which we have to ensure is, while pouring of concrete, the concrete should enter in between the reinforcements, occupying the entire space without leaving any voids. Otherwise, air will get trapped inside and honeycombs will be developed later. For this purpose, you can use a long rod to poke the concrete so that it reaches every nook and corner. If the area is large, you can use vibrators. This casting of roof slab involves the correct amount of concrete mix. Usually M15 mix is used, which means 1 part of cement to 2 parts of sand and 4 parts of stones. This we have discussed in our earlier videos also. Apart from mixing the correct amount of cement, sand and stones, one must use the correct amount of water to make the concrete, because too dry a mix is very difficult to handle and too much of water is not a good thing for the strength of the concrete. Next is concrete preparation. If the area of the building is small and it is a ground floor roof slab, then manual method of concrete mixing can be adopted. But if the area is large, one must use a machine mixed concrete, and if necessary, conveyor belts can be used to transport the concrete upwards. But if the area is too large, then you can use a ready mixed concrete. After pouring of concrete, you must ensure at least 21 days of curing with proper watering, that is 2 to 3 times a day, so as to allow the internal process of hydration and development of strength. As you know, concrete develops strength over a period of time. For that it needs water. But if you do not do this curing properly and skip through this process, as contractors and laborers would like to do, then you would most likely get a weak structure which may show up after say 5 or 10 years later with building cracks and building problems, which may be very difficult to rectify at that time, or the rectification will be costly. Next is, sometimes the roof slab will be extended say for 3 to 5 feet at the same level, but is not supported at the end through any column. This is technically known as cantilever part, and care must be taken while placing the steel for this cantilever part, as it is placed near the top surface, unlike the rod for the slab which is placed near the bottom surface. Though these are finer points, if you take care of these details, then you will most likely get a long lasting and strong roof slab.